It was always a simple question of common sense for me. Should a non-working member of the royal family who carries out zero public duties for this country and has no obligations to the British people and no formal links whatsoever to the work of the monarchy receive the same taxpayer-funded protections as the rest of his family who do all that? The answer, self-evidently, I would have thought, is no. But Prince Harry disagreed, as he often does with almost everyone about everything. He dragged the British government into court over his decision to downgrade his taxpayer-funded personal security detail for his increasingly rare visits to the UK. Well, today the High Court refused his application for judicial review. In other words, Harry has lost his case. And regardless of what you may think about him personally, I think I've made my views pretty clear, this is demonstrably the right decision. The artist formerly known as Prince Harry is at this point a kind of B, maybe C-list celebrity in Los Angeles. He lives in California, Montecito, spends a lot of his time in LA. He works on the personal causes he supports. He writes books and makes movies about how awful the royal family is and how dreadful and prison camp like the monarchy is and blah, blah, blah. He makes a lot of money trashing his family. In his most recent interview, he made it perfectly clear his focus is elsewhere.
I've got other trips planned that would take me through the UK or back to the UK. So I'll stop in and see my family as much as I can.
Think about becoming a citizen?
I have considered it, yeah.
Of course he has. Yeah, of course. He loves a life in America. And you know what? Good luck to you, mate. Because here's the deal. If you become a US citizen, you have to give up all your titles. They don't allow them in America for their citizens. So this is a win-win for everybody. Go and be an American and just exist as you, Harry. See how you get on. No one's saying that he shouldn't be allowed any kind of security on these occasional time-permitting trips to his former homeland. He gets it. We saw it when he came recently. The issue is whether you and I should have to pay for it on a full-time basis. His lawyers claimed he was singled out and treated less favourably by the Home Office, and the court disagreed. But why shouldn't he be singled out? He's the only senior member of the royal family who's quit the monarchy and the country. The Duke's lawyers also complained that Al-Qaeda issued death threats after he boasted in his own book about the number of Taliban fighters he killed in Afghanistan, which is precisely what everybody, including me, said would happen at the time when he put that in his book. It was stupid and reckless and endangered him and his family. Why should we pick up the cost of that recklessness? Well, last year, Prince Harry lost a separate legal bid for permission to pay for police protection in the UK. Again, the verdict was clear. He's not a working royal. As the Queen said, you can't be half in, half out. The British police are not guns for hire for a renegade royal living in California whenever he fancies hoovering them up. After 4 years of trashing his family and trashing Britain, Harry is now finding out the hard way that you can't have your royal cake and eat it. If you go, you go. And frankly, this is one less problem for a royal family that has more than enough on its plate right now. King Charles is fighting cancer, with all public duties postponed. Princess Catherine is recovering from abdominal surgery and will be absent until at least Easter. Yesterday, Buckingham Palace announced the very sad news that Thomas Kingston, the husband of Prince and Princess Michael of Kent's daughter, Lady Gabriella Windsor, has died. Prince William pulled out of a memorial service for his godfather, King Constantine of Greece, with just 45 minutes to go, despite accepting an offer to read a lesson at the service for unspecified personal reasons. That is also pretty unprecedented, and we don't know what those personal circumstances were. Disgraced Prince Andrew, meanwhile, seized into the vacuum and stepped back in what increasingly looks like a guy who wants to lead the family again. Is that right, after all he's been through? Should someone who's paid millions of dollars to a woman who accused him of sexually assaulting her now be leading the family into big royal events like that? Many think not. William's absence was reportedly nothing to do with the death of Thomas Kingston. But it is reasonable, isn't it, to ask, what is going on here? The royals are vaunting a new era of transparency. The decision to talk openly about the sickness of the King or Princess of Wales is laudable, but these are troubled times for the monarchy, worrying times for the monarchy, and many people are rightly concerned. A show of strength and reassurance from our future king may be sorely needed. Well, for more, I'm joined by the royal historian and author Tessa Dunlop, the royal editor Sarah Houston, and the former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole. Well, look, there's so much to look at here. Sarah, let me start with you. You're a royal editor. I mean, there's about 4 or 5 different stories blazing away in the last 24 hours alone, which in itself says to me we're in a very tricky period for the monarchy. Very tricky. You know, you've got senior players who have been incapacitated. Charles's cancer is a serious issue. Catherine, we don't really know what happened to her, but we do know we haven't seen her now in several months, and we won't for several more months. William mysteriously disappearing just before this memorial service started for his own godfather, and we don't know why. Andrew, you know, coming forward and looking like he wants to run the show. And then you have, of course, Harry and his latest legal action, which is lost on this occasion. In the totality, are you sharing my concern about how fragile this makes everything look?
Yes, and it makes everyone feel pretty jittery and concerned, doesn't it? And that's why I think there was so much attention paid to the fact that Prince William had pulled out at the last minute yesterday, because there is a vacuum, as you've described it, and we want to see our senior members of the royal family.
Do we know what William
We don't. It is a mystery. It really
should
is
it
a
be
mystery.
a mystery? Or
Look,
should it be a matter of public record?
They are entitled to privacy, and they are entitled to a personal life away from the public duties. But I think the palace have to understand that when you've got the king away from public duties with cancer, when you've got the Princess of Wales off duties for, you know, several months because of her abdominal surgery, and then you get a last-minute cancellation from Prince William.
My family
can't even
WhatsApp.
go just up the road to St George's Chapel.
I mean, they're all there.
For his godfather, where he's doing a reading. That poses a lot.
It rang a lot of alarm
questions.
bells to me.
Yeah.
I mean, my family WhatsApp chat, like I imagine most family WhatsApp chats in the country, for those who like the royal family, has blown up with all sorts of crazy conspiracy theories that are sweeping the internet.
Yeah.
And that is the problem, is that I think they have to actually go down the more transparent road they've been treading cautiously down and actually say, OK, here's the deal. This is what happened.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? Once you open up, as they have done, then people want more and more information. What we have been told is that the Princess of Wales is doing well, so that's reassuring. They didn't directly say it wasn't anything to do with her.
They didn't.
But didn't give us any more information. Did say it wasn't to do with the death of Thomas Kingston as well. And he's expected
what do we know about that, by the way?
That is really, really
absolute tragedy. He's 45 years old, apparently totally physically fit. He was seen laughing and joking
last week at the National Gallery. They were together on Valentine's Day. They were photographed together. Less than 5 years since they had that beautiful big wedding in St George's Chapel at Windsor. And then we see Prince and Princess Michael of Kent sitting there in the congregation yesterday.
Which actually made William's absence all the more glaring, that Prince and Princess Michael of Kent, this is their son-in-law who had just died, actually did still go and pay their respects. It makes you wonder, well, what was going on in William's life that is perhaps even more important?
And, of course, then the big picture, in the absence of William being there, the Queen driven to St George's Chapel. We had the royals walking down the hill, and Andrew, the disgraced Duke of York, is there leading the pack, stepping into that vacuum with great joy.
Right, so let's bring in Tess, is, I can tell, chomping at the bit to get in here. Let's talk first of all about Andrew, because I probably agree with you about this.
Well, I mean, he's the turd that won't flush. And one of the reasons that he's so visible and we can't cover him up with some Andrex is because there isn't much fluffy cushioning available in the royal family. And I've got to say, I'm surprised by your level of incredulity. We don't know precisely what the circumstances around William's absence. We do know that he's had some issues around commitment to work in the past. We also know that the right-wing press, in which I include you, by the way, Piers...
You think I'm right-wing?
Well, I think you posture on the right... Yeah, you do.
I was literally editor of the Daily Mirror for 10 years.
Yes, well, nowadays you work for The Sun and for Murdoch, so you're a different creature. And you've parked
doesn't make you automatically right-wing.
Okay.
Lots of left-wing people work for Rupert Murdoch.
For the hugely pro-monarchy press.
Yeah, it doesn't make you right-wing.
In the wake... OK, let's leave the right bit.
Sorry, it's a ridiculous slur. Only right-wing people like the monarchy. It's nonsense.
No, I'm not saying that, Piers. I just think you are further right of centre than you believe you are. You're quite out of touch.
Actually, you know what it is? I'll tell you, honestly, on that point, the woke left have gone so nuts, I do not recognise that what used to be the kind of leanings I had as a liberal. They're not liberals.
Okay,
they've actually become a bunch of fascists. So, yeah, by that criteria, I am more right-wing than they are.
Let's call you centrist dad who's pro-royalty.
But let's talk about Andrew.
No, I want to get back
to Andrew.
I want to get back to why Andrew is front and centre. Because actually, we've lost control of William. whether he had a valid reason or not for turning up at
You're
the
not
chapel,
questioning whether he had a valid reason,
yeah,
surely.
but the point...
This is
well,
Godfather.
we don't
He was
know.
actually reading
He
a
took
lesson
off.
at the memorial.
I hear that. But he can do what he likes because Harry's left. That healthy competition that existed between the siblings, between the rival camps, that's gone. And you guys have not criticised one step that any of them have made, with the exception of the Australian football final, which, by the way, was predictable. You have not criticised one step. He's untouchable. You've created someone who's untouchable.
William has been criticised repeatedly, as has Catherine.
No.
Yeah, many times.
Piers.
It's complete fantasy. Let me bring in Michael Cole. I think he's been shaking his head furiously at that claim. I mean, the idea that William has been spared criticism by the media is for the birds.
Good evening, Piers. Good evening, ladies. I think I would like to start by collectively, on all our behalves, expressing condolences to Lady Gabriella.
Yes.
Because she is an utterly charming girl. I can call her that because I'm twice her age. I met her at Prince Michael's birthday party in 2022. She was acting as the hostess, and she put me and everybody else at their ease. And she was a lovely person. Her dashing husband was there. And, you know, they've only been married 4 years. They were married at St. George's Chapel a year after your favourite people, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And they also had their reception at Frogmore House. Let us say it was a, shall we say, lower key, much more tasteful, on Hollywood reception. And it's a great tragedy that she finds herself at the age of 40 a widow. Of course, it's now down to the inquest. It's now down to the coroner. But it is another straw in the wind, and it's something on a day of bad news for the royal family. It was something you didn't want to hear at the end of the day. I wouldn't say, and we were talking about this, is it a crisis? It isn't a full-blown crisis, but it has the makings of one. And I think maybe you, all of us, we thought at the time on the 17th of January when I was with you, and first of all, it was announced that Kate, the Princess of Wales, was going into the London clinic, and then 90 minutes later, that the King was going to have treatment for an enlarged prostate. I thought Buckingham Palace had actually learned a few things, and Kensington Palace, and they were being more candid, or as candid as they could be. And I think in the case of this no-show by Prince William yesterday, which was, if not unprecedented, extremely unusual.
I can never remember anything quite like that, where a senior member of the royal family is slated to actually make an address at a former king's memorial service in this country, with royals coming in from all over the world, that they pull out with 45 minutes to go, and we don't know why.
Well, he's a gentleman, so he did ring Constantine's widow and Prince Pavlos, his heir, to tell them this was happening. And I'm sure that they made allowances and they didn't take it ill. But it is extraordinary. And I think a little bit of candor here, because the worst thing that can happen in a situation like this is that rumour starts.
Yeah.
And if rumour starts...
Which they are.
Well, of course they are, and they're all over the internet, social media, and so on and so forth. So I think they've missed a trick. I felt the people at KP were getting their act together, and people who are in daily contact with them, like the two people sitting next to you, will bear that out or not. And I think they need to be a little bit more candid, because we need
Michael,
to...
On a bigger picture, what does it say when you see the royals going into that memorial service? There's no Charles, there's no Kate, there's no William, and you see Andrew leading the royal family in, a man who many people in this country feel is completely disgraced. I mean, that's where the fragility of the firm, especially post the deaths of Prince Philip and the Queen, that the fragility of the firm is laid bare, isn't it?
Fewer and fewer royal occasions at which the Duke of York and indeed Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, are welcome. This is one of the ones where they could show their faces and be welcome, because although it was a royal occasion, it was also a family occasion. Yeah. Almost everybody among the royals there. And do bear in mind, the King of Spain was there, the Queen of Spain was there. And
Okay,
Queen
look, I
Sophia.
listen. I think we can all agree it's very odd what went down yesterday.
But can we also agree, actually, that in terms of the optics, I mean, the Queen of Spain looking fabulous alongside Philippe, that glorious extended formerly Greek royal family, again, looking marvellous. And our royals, those that did turn up, pretty down at heel, not helped by Andrew. And all I'm saying is all your focus and the press's focus has been down on Harry, thumping Harry, banging on about
all right, well, let's come to your favourite.
We need to focus on our royals.
All right, let's come to your favourite person, who today has lost a High Court challenge because he wants to have, once again, his royal cake and eat it. He wants to have armed British police to guard him all the time when he's over here. And I say, why? Why should the British taxpayer be guarding this goon? Honestly, why?
I tell you why. Because just imagine the optics if Harry and Meghan, well within his rights, by the way, also a family
member. She's never coming back here.
OK, Harry had been at St George's Chapel yesterday. Actually, if we made it easier for him, we would win back one of our key
He gets protection
assets.
when he attends a royal event. He just wants it all the time when he's in the country.
Harry, once a prince, always a prince. His birthright. He was born into a hereditary royal family. He had no choice on that.
He has made hundreds of millions trashing his family. He can easily.
Wait
a minute. Let me finish. He can easily afford his own security. And to actually put, by the way, in his plea to the court, which was, as we say, he lost the case, but to put, and he's appealing it apparently, of course, but he put in there. One of the reasons he wanted it was because Al-Qaeda had issued some threats over what he wrote in his book, where he himself boasted of killing 25 Taliban. I mean, a more reckless, stupid thing he couldn't have done. And then he gets, inevitably, some threats from the people who he's boasting about killing. And then we're supposed to pick up the bill for protecting him.
You know, you've flown pretty close to the wind legally too this year, Piers. And I think what we should do is marvel that Harry didn't detonate more bombs in his memoir.
Really?
Yeah, I genuinely mean that.
More?
I think the fuss that's been
How could he
made,
detonate
a
any
little
more?
bit of sniping about his stepmother, who doesn't snipe about their stepmother, and a go at William, he could have written so much more about his brother.
Oh, please.
And subsequently, he's not said anything. And he's turned up and he's done his service, like he said he would.
Your
with
ability
Invictus,
to defend
etc.
him,
no,
come what may,
no, actually, it's you trigger me because you're so black and white.
It's actually impressive. Well, so are you. No. Sarah, you've been listening patiently. I know you don't want to get into a slanging match about any of this.
She doesn't shout.
Because you're a woman of
I don't think I need
impeccable manners
to
other
shout.
than anything else. On the Harry thing, though, he's lost the case.
Yeah.
He's lost part of another case against one of the newspapers. He's got more newspaper cases
coming. And he also won
coming.
against the Mirror Group.
He won partially against the Mirror Group.
Well done, Harry.
OK, good for him. He likes to... Look, as I said at the time, this is a guy who is waging war against the media for being intrusive into the private lives of the royal family, whilst himself making hundreds of millions of dollars intruding into the private lives of the royal family. I think it's stinking hypocrisy. And I can tell you the British public agree with me.
You're not helping the royal family. You're not helping
nobody
by
cares
off
about
all the
his
time.
thing
What's
against
interesting,
newspapers.
Piers, I've been talking about this all day today since the decision. And actually, I think there's a real split in terms of what people think about this. There are a lot of people who've been phoning in saying, I don't like what Harry's done. I don't like the fact that he and Meghan have slagged off the royal family. But actually, I don't think we should deny him security. I mean, the fact is, he's not being denied security.
No.
He's just not getting the same level of security that he
And why
had
should
when
he?
he
Never
was
puts a
a
shift in
working
for his
member of the
country
royal
anymore.
family. I mean, look, you can argue that he was born into the royal family. He didn't have any choice on that. He is the king's son.
The others all do work.
And the argument made...
The others do duties, hundreds of duties a year. He's only duty to his bank balance.
Their argument, what would it have meant for our reputation as a country were an attack allowed to be happen on this soil?
He talked
Having
about that.
said that, it's a pretty hard sell.
Hang on. He talked about this in the court case. He said that he was, imagine about the damage to the reputation of Britain if something was to happen to him. What about the damage to the reputation of Britain he has already caused with his endless bomb throwing about the royal family? Michael Cole.
Yeah, from the outset, this was a misconceived action by the Prince of Litigation because he does get police protection. When he came here for the 25-hour flying visit, there were two blacked-out undercover Range Rovers. He was in the front one, and the back was wall-to-wall with armed coppers in the back, close protection officers, as they're called. And when he went to see the King, they were there, and when he went back to Heathrow the next day. So he gets police protection, and it's up to a committee to decide the level of threat against him. And that is completely right and proper. And as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay for his protection if he's not in this country, not doing the job. But when he comes with his wife and with his children, he will get the appropriate level of protection without any doubt.
He will be assessed. They've already said they will assess it as they would do a Hollywood star, which is,
exactly,
let's be honest, it's what these two are now. They will be assessed in the same way. If there's a specific threat when they're coming to this country, they will get appropriate protection.
Actually, I believe there's more of a threat to Harry. The way in which he's become embroiled in the culture wars, partly by hate driven on platforms like this, incidentally against him. But I'm interested that Michael Cole
platform against Harry.
Your soliloquy at the top of the show.
What about his hate?
It was bilious.
What about his hate?
He's not directing his hate.
What
at you.
about
Yes,
his bilious hate towards his family
as I said,
and the monarchy?
Relatively tame. I had to really look for it. I want to go back to Michael Cole's point about the taxpayers and that we pay for royal security. Actually, do you know, Michael Cole, how much we pay for our royal security bill? You don't know, do you?
Well, if you want to consult me privately, I'll tell you how much I have to pay in tax, and I know that some of that goes into
the reason you
paying
don't
for the
know,
Metropolitan Police. Listen,
the reason you don't know is because they've refused Freedom of Information Acts. They haven't answered. We have no idea how much royal security costs. I can tell you that they provide security for all those palaces, all those extra palaces, for the likes of Eugenie's year off, where she had security protection officers, and yet at the same time we're lampooning Harry because he no longer works, when we know he was the most famous and therefore most in danger member of the royal family.
He's not the most in danger member of the family. It's complete nonsense.
Actually, yes.
Complete nonsense.
Round the clock security, three teams, 3 shifts of big burly men looking after them. That costs an awful lot of money. You'll remember that when they scooted to British Columbia, to Canada, the federal government in Ottawa soon got fed up with providing very expensive security.
Why should they?
And they decamped immediately to California, which may have been Meghan's intention all along. And there, on their hilltop Camelot, they have to pay for their own security. We presume that, and that's one of their very wealthy...
By the way, what's he coming back for? Nobody wants to see him anyway.
That's not
None
true.
of his family want to see him.
King Charles does want to see him. Actually, that's not true. King Charles does want reconciliation.
King Charles gave him 33 minutes after he flew 6,000 miles.
Cancer diagnosis,
right?
And his schedule was
because I suspect most of the palace were like, here he goes again, making it all about him, right? It's what he does. And by the way, has he got a wire? Is this for his next book?
Oh, stop it, Piers.
I know.
Stop it.
How mad
you
I would think.
You actually don't want the royal family to have a reconciliation. You didn't want...
Not with him, no.
Would you agree with me, Sarah?
Not with him.
Actually, Piers exacerbates the divisions.
By the way...
You don't have to shout, but what's your
I'm
opinion?
here, Tessa. I agree with you. I don't. They should just absolutely cut them off. Sarah, let me ask... It's been a wretched year for Catherine, the Princess of Wales. There was Kate's Spiracy, the botched Mother's Day photograph, months of vicious and unfounded rumours about her marriage, and most seriously of all, of course, she was diagnosed with cancer. But this week, to everyone's great relief, she announced that she's now through chemotherapy and is currently cancer-free.
To an end. I cannot tell you what a relief it is to have finally completed my chemotherapy treatment. The last 9 months have been incredibly tough for us as a family. Life as you know it can change in an instant. This time has above all reminded William and me to reflect and be grateful for the simple yet important things in life, which so many of us often take for granted, of simply loving and being loved.
Of course, these days we're not allowed to have nice things. Social media critics and some commentators called it contrived, a cringe fest, and perhaps the most damning critique of all, like something Harry and Meghan would do. As you might imagine, I disagree. In a late entry for the most tasteless and despicable deed of the summer, Harry and Meghan released an advertisement for their new documentary about polo, the world's most elite sport, just 90 minutes after Kate's announcement. Well, joining me now to discuss all this is royal historian Tessa Dunlop, lawyer and commentator Paula Rowan-Adrian, and author of Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the War Between the Windsors, Tom Bow. Well, welcome to all of you. First of all, I've seen you all since the end of the long, hot summer. Tom, let me start with you, because it was an extraordinary way to make a statement. I've never seen anything quite like it from a member of the royal family, where we had this 3-minute, highly produced, movie-quality film. But at the heart of it, as I wrote in The Sun, was a princess laying herself open and saying, I've realised what is really important in life is loving and being loved. And the film certainly showed that with her husband and her kids. But what did you make of it?
Well, it was very gushing and it was beautifully made and it was unique in the sense we've never seen anything like that before for the British royal family. But I think the public mood towards Catherine is so beneficent. Everyone loves her and wants her to survive and prosper and be the future queen. That if that is the way she wants to reintroduce herself, everything is forgiven. And I thought there was nothing nasty about it. There was nothing over the top. It was just, this is how I want to be known. And that's fine. I thought, therefore, I liked it. And everything Catherine does, in my view, is okay.
I found it very moving, but only because I think she's a young woman in her early 40s who's, we don't know what cancer it is, but it must have been serious, whatever this is, because it's taken her out of action now for most of the year. She hasn't given any commitment to do any more engagements this year. She may or may not, she says. And, you know, I know somebody at the moment with terminal cancer, and we all know people who've been touched by cancer. It is an appalling thing when it's someone you know going through this, both physically but also mentally and emotionally for everyone. Tessa, though, if you read what Daily Mail columnist Liz Jones said, she said about the video, cancer is messy, imperfect, shattering. After all the mental health initiatives, her work stressing the importance of shaping young minds, this strange, odd film seemed a misfire from a family once so protective of their privacy. And Melanie McDonough in The Standard wrote, forgive me, was it necessary to share this news with the nation in such an utterly grisly video? It's as if she was advertising herbal essences, shampoo. What do you think of that criticism?
Well, it's interesting. It depends where you believe the key role of monarchy is. And given that they are the future, the touchstone, if you like, and all eyes are on her internationally as well, I thought it was the most extraordinary advert for Englishness. It was a golden summer that I didn't experience. I mean, you went overseas.
Well, I did. I was in Italy and France.
Those of us hunkered down in Britain. So on the one hand, it was a brilliant advert for the nation. So well done, Kate. I'm sure the English Tourist Board are currently raking it in. But there is a disconnect. And I think the reason there's a disconnect is because this is a very different version of monarchy that places family in the smallest sense of the word first and monarchy, the institution, second. What Kate's basically saying is, this is what I value the most, and it's my family, and everything else, including being a part of an institution of state, takes very much a back seat. And I did wonder how the late Queen would have responded to the public display of affection.
Well, OK, so Paul, let's talk about that, because the Queen, apart from the fact, we'll come to it, there's been the world's worst statue of the Queen released today in Antrim in Belfast, just quite extraordinary thing, in Northern Ireland. Let's park that horror story to one side. People have said, well, the Queen would never have done it. Interestingly, towards the end of her life, the Queen started doing some stuff, the Paddington Bear film, the Daniel Craig thing, things we would never have expected her to ever deign to do. She was beginning to relax herself in terms of the kind of content she was prepared to put out, recognising that in this kind of Instagram-friendly world we now live in, if you want to get to the eyeballs you want to get to preserve the monarchy, you maybe got to get in this game a bit.
Yes, but if the point of this video was to control the narrative, which is what we hear a lot about, don't we? I have to say I'm confused, because when I watched the video, I was befuddled. I couldn't understand the words I was hearing with then what I was seeing. What I was seeing was, as you said yourself, Piers, something that was very well produced, very slick, very polished. And it was almost like a show, because on the one hand, we had George going up to the camera in his cute, cheeky way and saying, is this rolling? Well, we know it's rolling, and we know that you've got 6 cameramen standing behind you, etc. And on top of that, honest to God, when I finished watching it, I wanted to know who the producer was, because I assumed that this was an Archwell production, because this looked like a Harry and Meghan.
It was that bad, you mean?
Well, I'm not suggesting that that's why you might think it was bad. I'm saying that it was very glossy, very California, very let's run barefoot in the sand. And that, to me, didn't represent what the message I understood
someone
posted
on X, as Liz Jones reported, this isn't what cancer looks like. Other
Yes.
sufferers will feel, well, I'm doing it all wrong. Others commented, why are the wardrobe changes, the soft music, the slow motion?
Yeah.
It was intended to show they're a happy family, but you have to try this hard, ...
Hang on, for 1 minute. Let's just cut the woman some slack. We were like braying animals at the bars when she released a homespun photograph with a little bit of tweaking here and there.
Yeah.
So can you blame her for going all out schmaltz and taking a leaf out of the Oh So Californian book? To be fair, I totally understand why this was choreographed to within 1 inch of its life. It's what we asked for.
But then compare it with the video that we had at the end of March, forgive me if I'm incorrect about that date, when Kate had to, sadly, she was forced, she was pushed into telling us that very personal detail about her cancer journey.
Again, that was soft focus, daffodils waving.
But it was her. In this video, Piers, I didn't see Catherine. What I saw was something that felt like an actress using the words of Catherine. And that I thought was very interesting because, as I said, I wondered whether this was about having some kind of polished, controlling the narrative exercise rather than Catherine being able to say, everyone, I've made it through this very difficult hurdle and I'm on to the next stage. I would also question some of the wording that was used. For example, I'm here holding your hand, other cancer sufferers. I would have thought we would have seen that. I would have thought we would have seen Catherine.
You mean literally see her with other cancer patients?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but, see, I would take issue with that because when I read that last line, I thought what I liked about it, and we'll come to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex element of this, but everything they do, in my opinion, and we can argue about this, is self-aggrandizing. It's to promote themselves. It's to do, whatever they want to do. This
all
was
the charity work.
This was
work with Invictus.
This was a princess laying herself bare and saying, "I understand that there are a lot of people out there with cancer, and I just want you to know that I'm metaphorically here with you. That's why I'm doing this. I want to shine a light on cancer and everything else." I thought that was powerful. Isn't that actually the duty and role of the monarchy? Is that the senior players do, even though we know they live in palaces, we know they have servants, we know they have all the trinkets, ultimately they put a kind of metaphorical arm around and say, we're with you. They're like the country's comfort blanket.
I totally agree. And that was the issue. That was the juxtaposition for me, because I was hearing these words and I was confused as to, OK, I mean, I've got family members who have thankfully survived their cancer journeys. It didn't look anything like that. And that's not to say that Catherine's journey needs to look like my family member's journey or anybody else's
Tom, let me
journey.
bring in Tom. Is that a fair...
No, because you don't know what the journey was like. I mean,
No, and I'm accepting
what
that.
we're seeing is the end of the journey, so to speak. And, she wanted to reintroduce herself to the public. I thought it was very, very wonderful to see the happy family. I think they have to appeal to the youth of Britain.
To me, is that what started as a justified war, Israel's right to defend itself against a horrific terrorist attack, has become something that has crossed any line. And that is why this war has got to end, and it has to end very soon. In a moment, I'll talk to Benny Morris and Norman Finkelstein. But first, 1 year after he spoke to me from a hospital inside Gaza, I'm joined by the American medic, Dr. Mossab Nasser. Well, Dr. Nasser, great to have you back on Uncensored, albeit in even more appalling circumstances than the last time we spoke. Just tell me what it's like there right now in Gaza, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what the reality is, because international journalists like me aren't allowed in. As I keep berating Prime Minister Netanyahu, if you want people to believe what you're saying about this, let the international journalists in. But they don't. So we're reliant on very scant detail other than people like you who really know.
Well, thank you, Piers, for having me. Again, it's been a year since we've talked. I believe last time was May 2024 when I was actually at the European hospital in Gaza. There was actually recently bombed, and many civilians were killed in that attack. You asked me how it is in Gaza today. The best example I can tell you, as someone who lives in Texas, is that the Israelis, unfortunately, or the Israeli army treats the Palestinians in Gaza like animals, almost like a the game hunting in a ranch in Texas where you have these high fenced ranches with exotic animals where hunters go and chase these animals from one side of the fence to the other and kill these animals. And that's unfortunately how the Israeli army treats the Palestinians in Gaza today, like game. And you can actually see the gratification on their faces when they, hunt a child or a woman or destroy a school or a kindergarten. So it is very sad to see that we have reached this reality that at this time in history, people are treated like animals. And, this is what we've heard at the beginning of the war, that Palestinians are human animals, and they have been treated as such for the past almost 2 years now, while the entire world is watching. So probably this is the best example as someone who lives in Texas and sees how hunters go to these ranches to chase game. That's what we see in Gaza today.
You have, I know, huge amounts of family and friends in Gaza. How many have lost their lives? People that are close to you?
So far, personally, my entire family is in Gaza. I've lost 74 members so far. One of them was my mother. She died last year, almost a year ago. And I just lost my nephew, who's 20 years old, had a life ahead of him, such a handsome, intelligent, bright young man. Who went, again, like game in Texas. He went to look for food for his family, and he was targeted in an Israeli airstrike and died of shrapnels in the chest and the head. And in fact, he died between his father's arms. He bled to death, and by the time the ambulance arrived to take him to the hospital, he was declared dead. So this is the reality. I mean, so far, 74 members of my family have been lost in this vicious war. And I can tell you, Piers, as a Palestinian, and, I lead a humanitarian organization, and we try to be as much as we can neutral and unbiased in our judgment. But we're left with no choice but to speak up. And I can tell you, watching these images coming out of Gaza on a daily basis of children being amputated, malnourished, head injuries, amputations. Many are burnt alive. Until last night, we've seen those images coming out of Gaza. I can tell you, show me the gas chambers. Honestly, the death in a gas chamber is 100 times more merciful than being burnt alive in an Israeli fire. That is the reality where we are today. So we are looking at the Holocaust live on 4K screens, and our politicians, our human rights organizations, our celebrities are just watching and feel helpless. I don't know if they endorse it or they can't speak up, but it's time to speak up. You cannot just sit on the sidelines watching this horrific murder take place right in front of our eyes, and then maybe 10 or 100 years from now say, well, we wish we've done something about it. This is the time.
As you know, the Israeli argument has remained that they are on a mission to take out Hamas. They say Hamas continue to operate and live amongst civilian populations, and therefore, as they take out the terrorists, with